So my name is Andrews, and I'm part of the Church of Witchcraft. I'm the Hierophant of the church, really just helping everybody stay on the rails, helping with some of the guiding policies. Um, and in my own practice, I do celestial witchcraft, and mostly that's just astrology that's very intense. I use it to guide different aspects of my life, and it will filter through pretty much everything that I talk about and that I do. Uh, and if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to us. Also, thank you for watching, all those people who are out on YouTube. Anybody who's watching this in the future on whatever internet platform you might be watching on, thanks for your time and your attention. So today we're going to introduce a new definition for one of our types of magic. So we're talking about Oneiromancy and the new word Somniurgy. I haven't actually been able to find a title or a name for this yet. And it's the best one I can come up with. So Oneiromancy, Oneiromancy, Oneiromancy. It's specifically a Greek concept. Oneiros is referencing sleep deities, specifically Morpheus, Phobeter, Phantasos. You can find all this information, pretty easily. But Oneiromancy is about the dream divination. Mancy, that suffix, is usually about divination practices. Somniurgy is 100%, transparency here. That is not a thing I found anywhere else. Somniurgy is referencing somnus, which is, of course, for sleep, and urgy being the suffix for principally a magical practice of some kind. So think, like I've talked about in the past, about thaumaturgy, theurgy, versus like theomancy. I wouldn't talk about like physical divination or something along those lines. It's a physical practice. And so somniurgy has to do with basically sleep magic. And sleep magic, I was actually called out on this one recently. A coven member of mine asked me that they were going to be doing spell work for sleep, and I said that that would be related to somniurgy. Jury's out on that one still. I don't have a very good definition of that, but definitely within the realm of sleep itself and internal, actually a sleep magic that's happening, not necessarily the external. But there's some liquidity here just because of the fact that that term I can't find anywhere and hasn't been coined to the best of my knowledge. If you find something different, feel free to comment down below or send us an email and just tell me I'm wrong or point out the information so that we can all learn together. So these two terms are things that you're going to hear consistently throughout our conversation today and this presentation. So again, Oneiromancy is more of the dream divination, and that can be an all-encompassing blanket term, kind of like how you hear pagan, or you hear people say Wiccan for all witches across the board, even though that's not necessarily the most articulate or accurate. And then somniurgy, that being of sleep magic within actual sleep states. There may be some preparation ahead of that, but principally for that. So originally I had developed an entire course. I used to teach, I used to be the professor for Oneiromancy at a pagan academy, basically, for a brief stint. And during that, one of the things that I developed was a 4-week crash course, essentially, on dream magic and dream divination. So I took that course, and then I condensed it down even further to this 1 hour. So I'm going to try and get through the crash course of the crash course, essentially, for this. So I'm going to be going through all 4 weeks of this course, which were like 2 hours each one with assignments attached to them. And if there's interest in this in the future, feel free to email us or contact us in some way. I am happy to run a class on Oneiromancy and run this from stem to stern like I had before. I'm going to re-record them, and I will probably put those on the church website. Don't hold your breath on that one. I have a ridiculous amount of obligations, so it is unlikely that it will happen. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen much later this year or next year. So just please be patient with us. We appreciate it. So the structure of that course is broken into 4 main components, and those 4 components are Clarity 1, Week 2 is Clarity 2, Week 3 was Interpretation, and then Week 4 is Stimuli. So we're going to just go straight through those as quickly as I can. And feel free, ask questions. This is a good place to do that. So in the first week of Clarity, the Clarity 1, what are dreams? So dreams are affected by internal and external stimuli. I have to break out my leaks here. That's all right. This is why I have to have this table here, because I have so much material to go through. So dreams are affected by internal and external stimuli. So things that are internal to you, so neurochemistry, what you ate, how you're feeling, any of those things are part of that stimuli internally. And use your imagination, you can pretty much reason through this fairly well. External stimuli, we're also going to drill down a little bit more on this as we get through the weeks. External is anything that's external to the self. So that could be your environment that you're sleeping in, things that are going on in your community or your environment, or all of those external components. During our sleep, things that are part of the internal stimuli also have to do with when we go to sleep. We're doing something called, our brains basically go through neuronal synapse pruning. Neuronal synapse pruning. And basically what that means is that your synapses are basically getting swept up so that they're more codified, and they'll die away, right? And they'll be reabsorbed by the body. They'll be broken down by chemicals inside of the body. Don't ask me, I'm not a neuroscientist, but basically those neurons will be transitioned to one cluster of specific synapses that are then used in translation of memories, and then they get recodified. So that synapse pruning is what's happening. Things that didn't divide properly, all of that stuff. So part of what your brain is doing when it's sleeping is synapse pruning and reconnecting things and strengthening already pre-existing connections. Our sleep state is useful to cleanse, organize, and process our experiences, and that is internal and also external. What that means is when we're cleansing our brains, there's a bath essentially of chemicals in our brain. Between the three main features of this are your dopamine, dopaminergic, acetylcholine, as well as serotonin, serotonergic. So these three things are affecting our dream states. So where my scientific brain went is it went to how do I affect those chemicals for myself, right? And you can do that through a number of different substances. Do your own research. We're not condoning one way or another. For me, over-the-counter stuff from local apothecaries, you can find them online. We'll talk about more of those, but things like mugwort can affect your dopamine and your serotonin and your acetylcholine levels. That being said, you can enhance or detract from dreams by affecting those specific neurochemicals. There's a whole bunch of others. I'm not going to get way into it. We're not in biology, but suffice to say that those are internal factors, and they are used for, like I said, cleansing, organizing, and processing experiences. So when we have experiences throughout our day, those are being coded into memory. The more points of contact that we have, the stronger that memory is going to be. The more that we access it, the more that it's the same thing. This is kind of when you get into some of the learning components in psychology stuff. The more you access something, the more points of contact you have, the stronger the memory is, or the stronger the learning is, and therefore you're able to learn more about that specific thing. So as you're sleeping, part of your dreams is related to that cleansing, that pruning that's going on in your brain. It's codifying those memories, it's reorganizing them and allocating them to appropriate places. Over time, these can become utilized and entrenched and that sort of thing. This is where you get into some of the image rehearsal therapy, IRT, and also exposure relaxation. I lost the other one, ERRT. So exposure, relaxation, don't remember the other R, and therapy. So those are two types of cognitive behavioral therapy that work with approaching those. So when you allocate memories when you're sleeping, you will have consistent exposure. This can lead to some of those repetitive nightmares. Also, repetitive dreams that you can be having. So repetitive themes and that kind of thing are why that happens, because of your allocation of that memory. The more points of contact you have in your dream state, the stronger that dream becomes, the more frequent that dream becomes accessed, And then you can start seeing where some of these patterns may emerge. And this is part of why being able to divine from your dreams is important, because if that allocation occurs more frequently, and you're seeing that more frequently, then that means something's important there to look at and to consider, because your brain keeps going back over it over and over and over. That could be from trauma. It could be from just work experience. So a lot of people have work-related dreams, because what do most people do during the week? They work 30 to 40 hours a week at the same place with the same people. And so these get coded a lot stronger because you have more points of contact in that arena. There is some stuff to be said about astral travel as well as lucid dreaming. This is way beyond the scope of that. It's a very deep, dense conversation about lucid dreaming, but that's really just the aware state that one is in fact dreaming. It is often attributed to, lucid dream is often attributed to the idea that that you're able to affect your dreams. That is a secondary stage of lucid dreaming, I would argue, and that lucid dreaming truly is just the awareness that one is in a dream state. And then from there, you can develop the ability to understand, oh, if I'm in a dream state, I can control this dream state. And that's beyond, like I said, the scope of this, but there is lucid dreaming that does exist. Some people refer to it as dreamwalking. Dreamwalking can also, that is related to that astral travel, and it can be dreamwalking into other people's dreams. We're not going to get too off onto that rabbit hole, but there is some anecdotal case reports about the ability to dreamwalk, to enter other people's dreams. I think there's also something to be said here for collective dreaming or collective dream themes. So people who are in covens or, in churches or other community organizations, if you're having similar experiences relatively consistently, the allocation of that particular group when it's happening and those things are going to be stronger. And so people will tend to dream around the same state, and they'll have similar allocated places that they're dreaming about. And so shared dreams, I think, may be related in part to that kind of contact. Let's see here. Okay, history of dreams. I gotta pick up the pace a little bit. So history of dreams. This is going to be a lot more, most of this was focused in Western pantheons. So we're talking Greek deities, Hypnos, some of Roman stuff, Somnus, and specifically the three that I would reference are Morpheus, Phobeater, and Phantasos. These are the three main sleep deities that exist, or entities, depending what your perspective is. But Morpheus is essentially the architect of dreams. Phobeater also has a secondary name, Icelus, I-C-E-L-U-S. This one specifically, so Phobeater, or Icelus, is the Oneiroi of nightmares. It appears as animals and monsters. It also means, the secondary name for Phobeater, Icelus, means semblance or likeness. So these are the mirages, the phantasms in your own dream state. So Phobeater, nightmares, Morpheus, architect. Phantasos is about inanimate objects and surreal dreams. Surreal dreams we have some of that background from our neurochemistry, as well as some of that allocation. And with that, it gets allocated weird because time doesn't apply in dreams the way that our linear time in this reality is. So our waking life has a consistent linear time, at least as we are perceiving it. In dreams, that doesn't necessarily apply. So you can have pieces of the future, pieces of the past, pieces of your present, all intermixed, and you get weird, surreal kind of dreams. And that is attributed most often to Phantasos. Hypnos is also anecdotally potentially a trickster, which I find interesting. Not that for a lot of reasons, but you can look, there's a book that I'm reading recently called Trickster Makes the World, and it's about trickster entities, deities, gods, however you want to phrase that, and what their influence is on society. One of the things that they talk about in this book is that tricksters don't actually have their own, they have a specific skill set, but much of what they do is a copy of something else that either do better or use for their own purposes or repurpose something along those lines. So Hypnos is repurposing, it could possibly be a trickster, and repurposing dreams, repurposing the use of those dreams. In some of the legends, the three Oneiroi, Morpheus, Phobeater, Phantasos, are the sons of Hypnos. In others, they also reference him as a brother, but I'm not as well versed in classic Greek poetry, so forgive me for not having all of those exactly correct. I also would speak about Nyx and Erebus. They are progenoi. They are basically beyond Titan level in Greek pantheon. They're primordial things. Nyx and Erebos are the deities of night and darkness, and they are the parents of Thanatos and Hypnos. So you can see kind of this lineage. You see night and darkness, Nyx and Erebus into Hypnos and Thanatos. Hypnos and then begets the three Oneiroi, Thanatos, Phobeater, and Morpheus. Asclepius also has a good mention here. There are temples to Asclepius, who is weirdly not actually a sleep deity, but was attributed to that. And it's important to mention because that was about healing through sleep specifically. So Asclepius was more about healing, but it was done so through dream divination. So oracles and Asclepius would work together often. Mercury is another one that you can also talk about in terms of dreams and conversations between different levels of reality, whether that's from Tartarus on through to the celestial, where, you know, Olympus and beyond and out into space in terms of Greek pantheon origins. So Mercury was a communicator between realms. It was one of very few of the deities that were able to do so. And so similarly, your dreams are related. Many dream stories and lore within Greece have to do with Mercury and Asclepius, which are secondary to the other main sleep deities or entities. Dream utility. This is one that's going to be kind of important, and this is related to that Asclepius and Mercury kind of iteration. These are for healing or guiding knowledge. The healing and guiding knowledge is really about what do I need to know, when do I need to know it by, am I missing something? This starts hinting a little bit towards the future modernity of Gestalt therapy. And Gestalt therapy is taking separate pieces of yourself that are disconnected and then sticking them back together very broadly. And basically the same thing can be said of divination, that I'm taking distinct parts of my understanding of future, past, present, and I'm putting them together and knitting them together in a way that helps guide me and move forward. This would be related to that oneiromancy or that dream divination. So we're getting dream messages or dream information about how to move forward from our dreams. And we can do that because our conscious is basically shut off during our sleep. So we can access subconscious motivations much easier through our dreaming state than instead of having the filter of our consciousness going. And so this becomes very powerful because you can see far more of what's going on in your own brain and what things are important to you and what things are recurring themes in your dreams that you wouldn't necessarily be aware of. Our brains are really good at pattern recognition, so putting the things together in unique ways, and that is part of that dream divination or oneiromancy. The purple down, Anglo-Saxon. So word, I actually have written down here, I'm going back to my notes at the same time. When people are speaking, they're using words of some iteration. And word is a verbal noun from Anglo-Saxon. It basically means to come to pass, to become, to be due. It has a turn, don't have it, turn or rotate, word or fate. And this is connected to witches. So where I'm going with this is that when specifically in Greece, when they're talking about the oracles of Delphi, there were many of them in a lineage, and they would tell information from a divine source of oneiromancy, and then they would use words to describe those actions. And this is you'll see this kind of recurring theme, or this recurring kind of vocation almost to guide society through dreams. You'll see that in a variety of different cultures around the world, often termed as witches. You might hear prophets, oracles, diviners, all of that sort of thing. And oneiromancy is one of those things that you can do to do the same function. Varying degrees of effectiveness depending on how often you're doing this. So with dream utility, you have divination, basically supernatural answers. And supernatural, I might have to retcon that word specifically, but let's just go with divination as essentially metaphysical answers that you're getting from an external source. Prognostication, these are predictions, so future predictions, past predictions, those kinds of things. Since time is not relevant to dreams, the sequence is broken down, so moving forward and seeing things in the future is possible. I don't have a consistent way to make that happen, but I have experienced it myself a couple of times where I'm about 24 hours whenever I've had those things. So I've had a prognostication dream where I dreamt of something and then it happened the next day. So you may have had experiences with that as well. But I have no reliable way of making that occur, probably just not in my discipline. Hypnopaedia, big fancy word, sleep learning. So dream utility, I can learn from my dreams. I can do things like tarot. I can use my occult technology, so pendulums, tarot, all of those tools that we use in witchcraft, we can use those in our dreams. Sometimes, especially as you remember that experience thing that I was talking about, the more points of contact we have, the more we have reference points. And those reference points happen and get allocated in our dreams. So if you do a lot of divination stuff in your waking existence, you're going to find a lot of that in your dreams. And then if you pair that with your lucid dreaming, I can be aware and then also influence that divination in the dream state. I specifically have 3 different tarot decks. There's a different deck in my dreams. There's one that's different in my meditations, and there's 2 that I use in my waking reality. And all 3 of them are very different. And I've done cross readings amongst all 3, where I've drawn a card in my waking life, in my meditative state, and in my dream state, and then done a cross reading across all 3 of those different planes. I don't have any reference point for that other than just my own experience, and it has led to some fascinating results for me to learn more about myself, and that's part of being that oracle. It's part of that divination aspect. So roots to Oneiromancy, we're actually almost out of this week finally. That's great. Roots to Oneiromancy. Fast, dirty way to do that is the big 4. That would be mugwort, Artemisia vulgaris. Those are the same thing. Mexican dreamgrass, African dream root, and yarrow. There are illicit substances that we do not necessarily condone, nor do we necessarily say that you should do, but they do exist and they will impact your dreams, just so you're aware. But those 4 you can get a hold of over the counter pretty easily. Mugwort, Mexican dreamgrass, African dream root, and yarrow. Those 4 you'll see pretty consistently. They're pretty easy to get a hold of, relatively, affordable. Those are usually, I will steep those in a tea. I will take that. It started with mugwort, 2 to 3 teaspoons worked great. And it escalated because I didn't realize you can grow a tolerance to mugwort. And so I was up to like 3 or 4 tablespoons after about a month and a half of doing this. And I went, oh, I didn't know you could grow a tolerance to this. So just something to consider if you're doing this. Please use your own reasoning. What's safe for your body really depends. Contact your doctor, do so with a bit of an air of caution, like with anything, especially when you're dealing with substances and that sort of thing. Yeah.
I would just do the disclaimer, mugwort for pregnant people.
Right. Mugwort, dangerous for pregnant people. Do not ingest mugwort if you are pregnant, male or female. The same thing goes for some of the major sedatives. So majorly accessible sedatives like valerian root. Valerian root shuts my dreams down entirely, and valerian can be very harmful to feminine reproductive systems. Just as a side note, be wary and cautious before you ingest any substance of any kind, legal or illegal, please. Sleep hygiene is another big one. What you're wearing, how hot or cold your environment is, what you're sleeping on, how noisy it is, light levels, sound levels, all of that is still going on. You're not just in sensory deprivation. Your body doesn't just shut down when you go to sleep. Your body is still functioning. It's still beating, your heart, you're still breathing. Things are happening. And the external environment is going to influence that. You can increase awareness improvements. I wonder where I was going with that in my writing here. Nope. But you can gain awareness and improvements so you can gain improvements in your awareness because you are being more cognizant of your sleep hygiene and working with your dreams. So you can work with, you can take this in tea form. You can use scents like incense to ground you or to familiarize yourself with some place because it bypasses some of our memory stuff and it makes encoding memory a lot stronger by scent memory. Astrology transits might matter to you as well. For me, they do. So phases of the moon, where Lilith, Black Moon Lilith is, or any of the different planets as they're moving. Meditation also has an effect on your sleep as well. Just know that when you are asleep and you are doing lucid dreaming, there is a level of exhaustion that can occur, largely because of the fact that you're actively engaging, right? And so your sleep quality, so how much rest you're actually getting, is going to diminish slightly or more, just depending on your experience. I'm going to try and get through this. We might have to split this up into a couple of weeks here. So we're going to move on to Clarity 2. This is week 2 of the Oneiromancy class. What are we going to find in dreams? Things that we are looking for specifically. You're looking for feelings in your dreams. So overall pervasive feelings. So we're moving from Clarity 1 to Clarity 2. And this is about, we know how to access it, what that's going to do. This week was derived about what you're trying to discern, what you're looking for in terms of divination, in terms of magic. So your in-dream feelings. So are you sad during this dream? Are you scared during the dream? Are you whatever it is? So pay attention to how you're feeling in a dream. Intuitive knowing, so claircognizance can happen. You know that something is occurring or something is about to happen. That's one thing to pay attention to. And also keeping dream logs is also important. If you want those, I have an outline for that you can use. Feel free to contact us for that information. In our dream logs, I was looking for colors that stand out, emotions, scents that are happening in the dream, any visuals that are repetitive or impactful. So you might see like a cup on a counter and it seems really important for some reason, but you don't know why. Pay attention to those kinds of things. Time, day, night, past, present, ancient, all that stuff. So how that time is being experienced in the dream. Echo relics are a unique one that I've not run across, but essentially it's things from your waking life that show up, or your meditative life, and show up in your dreams. So there's a specific location in a cemetery that I'm very fond of, and because of that, it shows up in my dreams. So this isn't just like one object. This can be a whole area of an echo relic, and it's just an echo of what's happening in other forms of your reality and existence. And if they keep showing up, these are also safe spaces that feel really good in your dreams. So if you feel scared, you can recall some of those, especially if you're actively dreaming, ergo lucid dreaming. You can pull those things up and go to those constructs, those echo relics, because you're so familiar and have so many of those contact points. Extrasensory perception, so the feelings of being watched, feeling like you're being stalked, or any of those things are going to be also very helpful to look for in dreams. I'm not even going to bother to go through all of the colors, but you can find your own, information on what color coordination means and what those correspondences are on your own time. Seeing if I can skip some of this stuff. Yep, I can skip that. All right, so you have to determine in a dream, how do you mark items as important? And it has to relate to those things that I was just talking about, those major components. If they're standing out to you, if they're, higher in contrast, or you keep getting fixated on them in dreams, that can lead you to tell what is kind of important in your dream. The subject of a dream, those things are going to be how we mark something as important. Also, what things you already see as important. So things that you're familiar with in your life, whether it's a favorite, shirt of yours, or if it's a favorite food of yours, it may show up in your dreams. And those are things that you can start pairing as important in your own dreams. Doesn't have to be food. It could be things on your altar. It could be occult technologies that you use. You also want to develop a dream library or a library of symbols, and this can be a variety of different things. I would start with just find a dream book of symbols and you'll find plenty of them. Start there, but start developing your own symbolic library. So the things that are important to you. So your own correspondence, your own connections, those things. So what does a raven mean to you? What does a sparrow? What does all of those things? How do those symbols, what do they mean to you? And those things are going to show up more regularly in your dreams. Trying to implant something that is important, like somebody says, oh, the Grim Reaper is super important, but the Grim Reaper doesn't really mean anything to you. It may take a form of something else. And so that can stand in place of that and still have just as much meaning. The more you have a developed library of symbols for yourself, this is why we keep that dream log, why we look at those things and those colors and those other things that show up or stand out in your dreams, is to give you an idea And that's a really good starting point for your lucid dream. If you're aware in your dream, start looking for things that are important. Start looking around yourself and going, ooh, that feels like this. Or I see, a snake and it makes me feel sad. Well, maybe snakes are depression to you. I don't know. It's going to really be highly subjective to the individual. But those are the kinds of things that you're going to want to look for. You can use scrying as well as other divination methods to determine symbol meanings to you and correspondences that are relevant to you, and also just keep a log of those so you can remember what's going on. Because it's really easy to lose all these things. I mean, think of all the things we have to learn and keep in our memory. There's so much, just write it down. It's going to make your life a billion times easier. Okay, what's fine? Symbology, cool. Plugging along. We're in week 3. Now we're moving on to interpretation. What does any of this mean? We know how to access stuff from week 1. Week 2 had to do with, okay, you got it. So week 2 had to do with more of that clarity and where we're looking at interpretation and what we're looking for within dreams. And then this week we're looking at some of the interpretation pieces, and that had to do with like the impact of meditation. My query for myself was to find out whether or not meditation would be able to be located within a dream state. So I wanted to find a place that I was familiar with in my meditation and see if I could find it in my dream state. It turned out that I could. It had to do with sigil work. You can look at our, the sermon on sigilry and all that stuff and sigil magic and how to develop sigils that are relevant to you. So the kinds of meditation that I was focusing on for me had to do with active meditation, transcendent meditation. So meaning I'm going on an active journey during my meditation. It's not just mantra. It's not just, sitting and focusing on breathing. It's very specifically more of that transcendent kind of journeying through meditation. It takes a lot of different names. You can find plenty of information on that. So that's where I will do more of my active meditation work that I'll connect my dream realm to. Zen meditation was really helpful for me, which was a way to quiet the mind. That shamanic journeying, and I'm going to use that term shamanic loosely, is that kind of journeying meditation. I'm going to go somewhere, set a scene or set intentions, and that I can maybe find in my dream state. The other benefit to meditation has to do with activating the sympathetic nervous system. It changes your oxygen consumption. It lowers your heart rate. It also increases skin conductivity, so more sensitivity across the skin, as well as lowering your respiratory rate. These things are very helpful for your sleep hygiene. So to quiet a very busy mind, one can do meditation work, which then gives you a quieter mind, which increases your sleep hygiene, which increases your quality of dreaming, which means that you can do better lucid dreaming. Seeing how all these things are connected now. Majorly, the meditations are to declutter, de-stress, and unify the self and the mind. Those are really difficult things and big, heavy lifts that you have to do. The Church of Witchcraft specifically focuses on the first altar, and the first altar is about taking care of the altar of the self, right? So if I'm doing these meditative practices, I can clarify myself and my dream state for that allocation.
Green.
So when you're doing this meditation, it's to assist the process of the allocation that your brain is already naturally doing. You already have a propensity for it. You're just giving it an assist. And this is a way to increase your sleep hygiene. And specifically in chaotic environments or in chaotic time of your life, that meditation can be a saving grace as well. If you have a really, really busy mind, having something like a mantra meditation initially, counting with, mala beads or whatever, or having something that you say keeps your mind focused, at least engaged, which may help quiet some of that, because just sitting and trying to be quiet for 5 minutes really trips out some people pretty quickly. And so this is at least a way to step down from that. So if you have a busy mind, you can use things like beads or mantras that give yourself a task to do. And then once that becomes more comfortable, then you can move to, silent meditation. And it's just a progression. Remember, gentle with yourselves. It's always important. Okay, so divination was another key aspect of this, and divination relies on schemas. And a schema is basically a represented plan in your brain, a theory in the form of an outline. So schema is basically how your brain conceptualizes things. So you're putting things together in a sequence and you're putting pieces together in that manner. Also, you might have a schema for tarot. What does tarot look like? You know, it's 78 cards. You know, there's a story behind it. These are the schemas or models that we have for tarot, which inform our dreams. You want to develop habits of these schemas of a variety of different occult technologies. That would be routine or cue, routine, and reward. So the cue is something that occurs, and then there's a routine that I do from that cue, and then I get a reward from that cue. So if I meditate, my cue is I need to relax. My routine is I'm going to sit down and, you know, focus on this specific thing. And then my reward is a more clutter-less mind, or a less cluttered mind. The same thing goes across all different aspects of human behavior. You can also think of this in terms of behavioral, which was antecedent, behavior, consequence. Antecedent, the thing that comes before; behavior, the thing that happens because of the antecedent; and the consequence, the outcome of what that behavior is triggered by that consequence or by that antecedent. So antecedent, behavior, consequence is one way to think about habit forming, but cue, routine, reward is another way to think about that as well and consider how you develop that. So if we're practicing your meditation and you have that relaxation, you may then try your lucid dreaming. It's more effective. That's the reward. You're now more actively able to do divination, and so you will reinforce that. It goes back to that synaptic pruning as well as that self-programming. All that gets tied together. Let's see here. Program the mind, astrology and transits. Good. Dream spheres. We're going to move a little bit quicker on that. So dream spheres, instead of trying to make a specific dream happen with specific dream furniture, and by that I mean all of the echo relics, the colors, the memories, and trying to establish like a level design almost, or trying to be the architect of that, for me, it's been very helpful just to let my subconscious run wild. But I've marshaled my subconscious and my conscious, which helps marshal my subconscious. So the more that I have that schema developed, the more that my subconscious is also going to be similarly structured. And that structure to my subconscious makes my dreams more accessible, if that should track. But dream spheres are about thematic dreams. So if it's a death dream, just let it be a death dream. Your brain will populate it of its own accord. So very much like psychological horror, for example. They never show you the monster. They just give this looming sense of dread, and your brain just fills in the gaps. It's the same way that we read stuff. You read really the first letter and the last letter, and your brain just fills in the middle. And so that very similarly with dream spheres. If I want a death dream of some kind, then I'm going to build the schema just suggesting that. I may focus on that, or may surround myself with some of those cues that I have. And then the resulting things that my brain is then going to allocate more likely to that. The more frequently you do this, the stronger that association is going to be, and then you can cue specific dream spheres. My personal research was working on, and at the moment is not, I'm too busy for this, but I did want to try and develop teas, TEAS, out of different herbal compounds to see if I could incite specific dream spheres. So if I could incite a childhood dream or a death dream or a future, like a prognostication dream, I wanted to see if I could go there, and that's kind of my next jump. But dream spheres, let your brain populate it. Let it play with the images that are in your subconscious, and the more focused you are at pre-programming your own self, whether that's spell work or sigils or rituals, the stronger that association is going to be in your subconscious that you don't have to guide. So play around with some of that. The other reason that we keep dream logs is to see what materials you may have used. So what teas you took, what the transits were, what the date was, what was going on for you, when the dream occurred. I can specifically state that between 4:07 a.m. and 4:27 a.m. is the most common time that I wake up for myself. That varies from person to person, but I realize that when I wake up at that time, I usually have had a dream before then, and that's almost exactly when I wake up is that window. And I have that because of my dream logs, and I realized this is what's happening for me, and that has to do with your REM cycles and how that's all developed together. So there's a bit of neuropsychology in this, as well as some of that neurobiology, as well as some of the witchcraft pieces that we do. But logging your information about dreams is going to really assist you to see and start figuring out where patterns are happening. And that's going to be very informative in some of your most powerful indicators. Repetitive echo relics, etc. So that in meshing within groups, so community groups like covens or churches, they will tend to have similar dreams because they have similar points of reference, and those will be shared dreams. I don't have a lot of information on that, but I do know that it's possible. I've experienced it myself on a couple of different occasions that will dream in sequence or in mesh dreaming, and that's just connected dreaming about the same thing, but they take different, the sphere of dream changes depending on the individual and how it's filled out. You can also recall Morpheus, Phobiter, and Phantasos. Those are also dream spheres that are happening. So Morpheus is building some of those, or at least in the Greek belief that the Morpheus will build those dreams out. Phobiter gives us some of the fearful dreaming that occurs, but those are going to inform our dream spheres. And maybe you will run across an entity or a deity. This is where the next piece goes. That's what I thought. Is dream characters. I'm going to be very careful with this term because character can cue or trigger some certain thoughts, and really I think that the term is better for dream figures, figures. So dream figures, it's about the figures that populate your dream. Other humans in your dream, other animals that are in your dream, just consider those because they're going to be influential or informative of what's going on in your dream. In Gestalt therapy, which I mentioned slightly earlier, there are several different techniques. So role rehearsal, repeating to learn. So you're going through a similar role in a dream and repeating that same role to learn from it. The empty chair, you can literally in your dream populate a shadow version of yourself in a lucid dream and then literally talk to your subconscious in a dream. So this is another really great use of dream utilities. Exaggeration, large movements on how you feel. So you can move a lot of things in your dream. Every piece of it you can manipulate or alter or change. And the more the way those things move gives you an idea. So if you're doing grand sweeping gestures, it's usually indicative of drama or those sorts of things. If they're small, start putting some of those correspondence together for yourself as well. Image rehearsal therapy, which I mentioned slightly earlier, is also about re-scripting your dream. So if there's a repetitive dream that's going on, you can use occult technologies to drill down further on what the meaning of those things are, and then you can re-script the dream, right? You can continue to expose yourself to that and really confront why you're having a dream that's so repetitive. And usually these are self-components that you're using. The last component for this is supernatural agents. So things that are entities, deities, or gods. That's a long story behind each one of those. There are entities, and for the purpose of this conversation, there are entities, things that populate, that have some sort of autonomy. They're autonomous agents. A deity is something that is divine in nature, but not necessarily a god. When you're talking god or gods, goddesses, those are more in the realm of where I would talk about those being specifically something to be worshipped. And it's a choice of the religion, cult, dogma, or doctrine that is informing whether or not that has some sanctity. I don't think anything is innately sanctified. I think that they can be innately divine, but not necessarily innately sanctified. So for a religious purpose or the pivotal component of that. So in your dreams, deities are something that you can interact with, something divine that you can interact with. I had a dream where I interacted with Old Man Coyote. Didn't know that, had to look it up, found out that was one of the deities that was in Native American folklore. I have no connection to that, but it showed up, and it was the best manifestation that I had. Another one when I had my brain filled in from Isis and Inkiel being related to Neptune. I didn't have the word Inkiel, but I did have the word Isis, and my brain just filled in Neptune. So I had Isis and Neptune. I was like, those two things don't match, but the archetypes behind them did. So it's my brain trying to reason for me and influence how I can understand that. So these entities or deities that happen in your dreams are ways that you connect with the divine, specifically with those kinds of spiritual entities, deities, so on and so forth. Give them the due respect that you think that they should deserve, right? If they're showing up in your dreams, you might want to pay attention. Whether or not they're real, autonomous, or something else is beyond the scope of this specifically. But if they are appearing, these are major archetypes at the very least and have some prominence within them. I once had a visitation by Morpheus, or what I understood as Morpheus, at the end of a dream that I had. The dream records basically the whole loop of the dream. So you know how like a record plays and goes to the end and then stops playing? Similarly, I have dreams like that where my dream begins and is supposed to have an end state, but I can manipulate that end state to continue past when the dream should have ended. And that was with Ginkgo biloba specifically. I've had 3 separate instances where that was effective, to include Ginkgo biloba in a tea with mugwort that caused my dream record to be extended beyond when the dream should have ended. When I did that, I encountered Morpheus on one of those 3 occasions where the dream record ended for me. And it was very interesting because I looked out a window, I saw this entity that was sitting at a table outside on the porch of this house that I was in this dream, and it looked back at me, confused, like I shouldn't be there, because the dream had ended. It needed to go to the next dream. The cycle had stopped, but I was still there, and that didn't match. It didn't last very long, but I thought that was an interesting anecdote for people to consider. And also consider your own stimuli, the external and internal aspects of those. So your internal and external has to do with your, oh wow, I was herbal, right, internal. So herbal components. So the things like teas and that kind of thing, ointments, so on and so forth. Those herbal components are going to have an effect. Like I was mentioning with mugwort plus Ginkgo biloba, has a certain effect. I have a whole slew of different, magical herbs that I'm using or that I use for magical purposes. Things like passion flower, vervain, angelica root. There's a lot of different components that you can use, but those are going to have an impact on my internal neurochemistry that informs how my dreams function. What your room is like, I was mentioning the sleep hygiene, as well as your emotional state. If you're in a compromised emotional state and you're just an emotional wreck, don't do this. Just don't do magical practices. Just wait and hang out, chill, balance your first altar. Don't worry about doing magic stuff. There's plenty of time for it. Don't force it. External things have to do with, for me, specifically transits. So how planets are moving, where things are, whether there's a lot of oppositions or conjunctions that are occurring, or specific auspicious times. Very specifically, you might want to consider dream magics during sabbats or esbats. Equinox, vernal equinox is coming up soon, and that is going to be a potent time, in my opinion. That's a potent time for some of this dream work. So it might be an easier route for you to get into some of the lucid dreaming or some of these techniques because of those auspicious times. Shockingly, I actually managed to get through all of that. So thank you for listening to that whole sermon and all of the crash course of the crash course. Like I said, if there's interest in me doing this more in depth, I can definitely train Oneiromancy and I can work with people on that. And so if you have that interest, feel free to reach out, contact us, all of that stuff. And always open to discussion. For now, I wanted to say this last few minutes here, we'll go a little bit over, but thoughts from other people, any questions, because I just threw a whole wall of information at you.
Hi, this is Chloe. I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed this and I thought it was very well structured and very informative. So thank you for taking the time to share this information with us.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I appreciate that. And shameless plug, we are a church. We take donations and all that stuff. Not required. Helps us do stuff and support other witches. Atrophy has all of the church services are still open to you regardless, because we just want to help witches develop their own specific unique practice in respect to their tradition or their system.
How do you get in touch with your ancestors?
That would be an entirely other sermon. There's so much information on how to go about ancestor work. I'm not the most versed, but I know a lot of people that are. And so if you want to reach out to us via email, synod, SYNOD, at churchofwitchcraft.org. There's also a contact form on our website, churchofwitchcraft.org. With that, you can reach out to us and we can get you connected with, somebody who's better versed in ancestor work and how that's going to interact with an individual.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, it looks like we don't have too many more questions, but what I will say is you can get in touch with us on Discord, Facebook, our email. You can find all this information at churchofwitchcraft.org. You can find all of this information there, and you can always reach out to us. We have our phone number you can call us at. You can text us, all of that information. We are happy to have conversation as long as they are collaboratively minded and respectful. Any modality of witchcraft is certainly welcome, and we look forward to connecting with whoever is showing up and all those that have been here supporting the church up to this point. All right, we will see you guys a little bit later on, and maybe we'll see you at the next sermon. And we also have the Dark Moon coming up here in Colorado Springs. We also have Ostara Tea Party coming up as well on the 25th next week. So enjoy your Sabbat, whatever you're going to do. Celebrate by yourself, celebrate together. All up to you. But other than that, we will see you in the future, perhaps. Thanks for being here, and have a great evening.